Hi, I'm Todd Austin. I work for Floors to Go in Grants Pass, Oregon. Floors to Go is a national buying group that we belong to. It encompasses all the flooring categories: hardwood, especially tile, laminate, carpet, vinyl. So pretty much all the facets in the flooring world they cover for us. They're a great partner for us just because it gives us some access to all, or if not all of the lines, some of the lines through them. They also give us exceptional pricing, so it puts us definitely a cut above the competition. Moisture meters are probably the most important key to any hardwood installation. We really encourage the homeowner to either buy a moisture meter or make sure that the technician that's installing the job has a moisture meter to document the moisture content of the wood and the subfloor, so that we have a base point and baseline to basically establish to make sure that the wood is not going to react after it's installed with a higher or lower moisture situation. It's super key to the puzzle. Because we know that even if it was a week-long time and they didn't have the HVAC up and running, if you install wood and then all of a sudden the HVAC's turned on, you're probably going to have an issue with warpage or shrinkage or what have you. So we had an installation that it was for a contractor building a new home for the client. The installer went out to take a look at the job. We've got the wood on site to acclimate. So acclimation obviously is just letting it sit inside. Again, we give a time frame about a week, but the installer's out there with the moisture meter documenting, and he's getting readings that were just off the charts for moisture. So in that situation, if we wouldn't have had the moisture meter or the documentation on that, it could have been a real nightmare for the end user, because it would have popped off the floor. And so, yeah, it's really important, super important. A proper procedure for us would be to meter the wood with the moisture meter as well as the subfloor. The NWFA guidelines state 3 to 4% needs to be held with the wood content. So if the wood's at 10, the subfloor needs to be at no more than 14 in order to put it in. And the numbers just need to match within that 3 to 4% regardless of what the number is. And then we know that it's safe to actually install the product. Most of the time when that happens, the wood would get put down. The reaction happens again. It can either warp, which is, kind of warping up this way, or it's going to pull apart or shrink. And when that happens, the homeowner obviously is pretty upset. We know the manufacturer is going to ask for those readings to support the claim if we have to initiate one. And when those aren't taken and those numbers aren't available, usually the end user is at fault. Even though it was the installer putting it in, the end user really is going to be the one that's going to be left out in the cold with bad product. And then to try to get it replaced, they're going to have to probably ante up for new stuff, which isn't a great ideal situation because they've already made that investment. We try to make sure that the homeowner understands about acclimation and why it's important. If you don't acclimate your product, you're more than likely going to have an issue with the product down the road, if not right away. So yes, the installers that we use are great technicians, and the ones we use for hardwood definitely have that moisture meter and are metering the surfaces before they install it and writing those numbers down. But it's also good to let the homeowner know that as well and why we're doing that. And when the job's not ready in a week and we have to wait another week, there's a basis for that and they understand. Again, the warpage, the swelling, or the shrinkage of the floor can definitely be evident, and it can be down the road too. I had one situation where the homeowner, we had everything metered, the wood was brought on site, everything was good, our conditions were met in that 3 to 4% range. After the wood was installed, the homeowner got online and said, hey, I see that I have to put a humidifier in order to maintain the environmental condition. That's not what you want to do. Okay, you put a humidifier in, we're going to totally disrupt the acclimatic condition that was provided when we installed the wood, and so therefore it's going to basically cause that wood to absorb more moisture, and the whole floor actually ended up popping off the floor. It swelled and came loose. So, with a 1,500 square foot job that it was, quite a few dollars that had to be, unfortunately taken care of by the consumer and not by the manufacturer. If you don't have those numbers and the installer can't supply those numbers, if we were to happen to get into a claim situation, Usually a flooring inspector is brought on site, and he may come up with different values, but we can also then document, say, hey, we did document that. This is what they were now or when we installed it, and this is obviously what you see. So there might be an extenuating situation, maybe a broken water pipe or some groundwater penetration from someplace that's causing that. It's the ones where they, put the humidifier in. I think that was probably the worst one that I've seen, with hardwood anyways. And it was a nightmare because it can, as a retailer, you don't want to have to go back to the consumer and say, unfortunately, what you did was wrong, after they had done their research and felt that they were right. And, that takes some kid glove work to basically let them know that. But we also really address the acclimatic time period and what we're looking for in that before we even started the installation. So at the end of the day, they weren't they weren't real happy that happened, but they also understood what they did and why it was doing what it was doing. They actually ended up replacing the wood. They took the humidifier out and didn't run that anymore. And with the second installation, we've had no problems, and it's been about 10 years. Typically, if the installer is not taking those measurements up front, that liability does definitely get pushed back onto the installer. But still, if we send a flooring inspector out, the flooring inspector is going to say you shouldn't have installed it, the acclimatic conditions weren't correct, and you did it anyways. So usually the consumer, again, has to purchase more material to replace the damaged, and whose liability that lies on is really kind of, again, that gray area. So if it's defined by the installer with the numbers up front, we can say, no, that this was our conditions when we went in. The flooring inspector's been out and he finds different conditions than that. We can go back to the mill and basically say, hey, this is what we did. Sometimes the mill, again, if there's enough gray area in there, they'll just take care of it for us. I mean, we're pretty good clients. We buy a lot of material from our vendors, so again, they'll give us the benefit of the doubt a couple times. But in those bigger jobs, it just gets real sticky. I mean, you're talking $15,000, $20,000 hardwood job, and you want to replace the whole thing because you didn't take those readings, or you took them and then you changed something in the environment. I think simplicity is really the key. I mean, I think most people don't understand how to really read one. When we meter wood, we want to make sure that we're taking pictures of the meter itself. I think that's probably the best way, because sometimes people don't know what number to write down or what information to write down. And I tell them, like, just put the meter on the back side of the wood, take a picture of it, put the meter on the floor, take a picture of it. That's your documentation. I mean, you don't have to worry about reading. The consumer doesn't have to worry about knowing how to read it, but you've got it. Now, it's really up to the installation tech to basically decipher the numbers and make sure that you're, within tolerance and that kind of thing. But yeah, I think simplistic is probably one of the biggest keys, and something that's dependable. It's got a really good reputation. I mean, Wagner we've used in the past has always been a really great moisture meter. Again, more on that simplistic version, but offering some really great tools out there too for when we're doing concrete installations or hardwood wood subfloor installations. Installation over concrete, installation over wood subfloor is going to get nailed down. We use a underlayment paper with a vapor barrier that's in between the two layers of craft paper, so that's required. And it gets nailed in. Once you get into concrete installation, you're going to be gluing it down. And when we put adhesive on the floor, we're not only concerned about the moisture content, but the RH of the concrete, making sure the pH is right, making sure we're not going to have any reactions with the adhesive, because that is what's securing the wood down. So yeah, it's really important to get an accurate reading on concrete. It's probably where I find that most people really need to have the moisture meter. I mean, wood is wood, and we know that we still want to meter that, still want to have those variables, but concrete just is like, it should just be a given. Make sure you have a moisture meter. I mean, honestly, that's, we have one here that we allow them to use and borrow when they either don't have theirs or didn't have one. I mean, we don't want them to go ill-equipped onto the job and say, oh, well, I thought it sat on the job site for a week, I was good. Guessing and time frames, again, are not the right way to do it. We need a scientific number to establish for the consumer and also for the installer.